Hey, everybody, welcome to the IndyCarDad podcast. I have a special guest. I'm very excited. I'm a big fan of the Indy NXT series, and we have Jordan Missig with us today. He's from Able Motorsports, and he's currently 8th in the standings. So Jordan's having a good start to the year. Welcome to the podcast, Jordan.
Absolutely, Tom. Thank you very much for having me on. I'm looking forward to the show. It's going to be a lot of fun. And yeah, I'm excited to see what we're going to be talking about.
Great, yeah. So first of all, do you call it Indy NXT or Indy NXT?
So we've been told, or everyone's been told to call it Indy NXT. Now,
Okay.
everyone wants to call it Indy NXT to kind of abbreviate it, but the official term is Indy NXT.
Good. That's good to know because I like the shorter version. So, listeners and watchers, Jordan is a radical champion. You're a go-kart champion, and you're in your second full season of Indy NXT. Kind of, you had some more time in there. So, is that a good way to describe it? Second full season?
Yeah, I mean, my first year, I just kind of was a way to get my feet wet and kind of get used to the car and everything. So I did like a handful of races, maybe like 4 or 5 at most. In 2024, that was kind of in coincide with my radical season that I was doing. But yeah, second full season running in the Indy NXT car with Able Motorsports. So very pleased and happy with the way it's kind of started out and how we've kind of approached our season and how the first leg of it's going. So we kind of go into the month-off break now before we go into Indianapolis in the month of May.
Yeah, great. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to the month of May. So, Jordan, it's the IndyCarDad podcast, so I hope to reach out to some dads. And I know, like myself, I was a big racing fan, and I kind of hoped my kid would get to be a racer. And it didn't happen to work out the way it worked out for you. But I'd like to kind of get into how's a racer made? Are they born? Are they bred? And so can we start from the start? Like, what's your first racing memory? Like, what's the first thing
Yeah.
you remember?
So most kids, when they first start racing, are anywhere between the ages of 5 and 11 when they get their first start. Especially kids at the professional level, where I'm at right now, or in IndyCar. They're starting
Yeah,
at around ages.
Mick Schumacher said he got his first go-kart at 2.5.
Yeah, so I mean, kids are getting into seed as early as 2 to 3. Some are later to 5. Most are kind of around 5 to 11 is that age range. My first experience in a go-kart was 5, doing so basically some test laps, but that was it. My dad was married to the business at the time. He had an automotive repair shop business for about a good 29 years, just shy of 30. But he was married to the business at the time, so he could not take the time off or allow us to be able to go travel and go racing in the time. So I was never really got the shot to go into a go-kart seat at the younger age. But I got one test day, and the guy thought I was really good and wanted to go ahead and sponsor me and, put me in a go-kart. But my parents said, no, we couldn't do it at the time. So I basically, from the age of 5, had to wait around 13 years to now get my shot. When fast forward now, at the age of 18 is when I got in my actual go-kart start and actually started racing competitively. So I was much, much later than most, kids nowadays.
Yeah, right.
And I'm coming in with just say, this is my 10th year now racing. So about 10 years ago was when I first got into a go-kart. I'm racing now kids that have, are at the ages of 20 and they've been racing for 10 years or, are 24 and they've been racing for 14. So I have guys like who have sometimes a lot more experience. I've kind of caught up a little bit in terms of experience level. But you get a lot of guys who are still upwards to around the exact same range of experience, but they're like 10 years or 8 years younger than me. So it's like, I'm looking at the scale and I'm like, I'm just as fast as these guys are just as good, but I've been able to come up through the ranks at a much shorter period of time. And I think for me, with me being 18 years old at starting, it's just allowed me to mature a lot more and allowed me to, make that stepping stone up the scale of the IndyCar ladder system a lot faster than what most other kids, tend to take. Now, you see guys like Kyle Kirkwood, Oliver Askew, even Christopher Rasmussen, they can go up the IndyCar ladder system and got to IndyCar within 3 to 4 years. For me, it's taken me a little bit longer on that front end, but to get up to Indy NXT, it took me probably about 6 years of racing professionally before I was an Indy NXT driver. But yeah, that's kind of where the start came from.
Uh-huh. And then, so you don't start racing go-karts till you're 18. That's incredibly late. So I give you a lot of credit. I hear a lot of people, like I see people, I used to race karts. I didn't start till I was like 25. Like yourself, I had to, kind of do it myself a lot. I raced motorcycles when I got out of college, and that was my jam. But I've seen people online, like kids, teenage kids, 14, 15 years old, saying, is it too late for me to get into karting? And people are saying, yes, it's too late. You'll never make it. But that's not true. I mean, you're in Indy NXT, like you're making it. So
Yeah, and it depends on like there's two things that really come into it, and I like to be kind of a little bit of an advocate for guys who are getting a start late because people come up to me, I always ask, how do you get into Indy next, or how did you get started in racing? How do you do all this and that? You get maybe a handful of guys who say, I'm, let's say 18 or 17 years old. How do I get started in racing? And it's the exact same way that we start off with kids. Whether you're 18 years old or 5 years old, you're always going to start in go-karts. And I always just say, get started in go-karts, race at like a local track, race at a regional level, and then kind of find out what your experience is from there. I mean, you could be an 18-year-old kid and be quick as can be, win a lot of races, and it's just how does your progression level move up? Obviously, when you're 18, you have to be on your game from the very get-go,
so
and you got to be going. It's not really much time to be able to dilly-dally and mess around and be able to go trial and error. Now there's some time, but you got to be winning races and you got to be winning championships along the way while you're doing your trial and error experience. But it all comes down to like how do you perform at your regional levels, and if you're winning races there, then move up to the national levels. If you're winning races there or competing for podiums and all, then that would be the time to kind of say, all right, I've competed, I'm getting my experience, I'm learning what I need to do here. Once I feel like I've learned enough, let's jump into karts and let's go from there. The quickest way to go to pro racing is to get out of karts as fast as you can. Now, I'm not saying to any kid out there that needs to feel like I need to get out of karts as quick as possible, I win a race and move on. No, it's just you need to be able to be consistently running up to the front, consistently battling for race wins, battling for top fives. And once you feel like you've learned all you could there, that's when you make the transition and the move up. You don't just do it because you've won one race and you're running, let's say, 15th or 10th every single race. You got to show the consistency value that you're running up front and competing for race wins before you can move up.
Right. Makes sense to me. Yeah, we, as a super fan of the series, you see a lot of drivers that they just do it by time, and that's not really how it works. It's like should be like shifting a manual car. You get to the peak RPM, you go to the next gear, not based on how many days you've been driving.
The biggest mistake I've seen, and it has ruined either kids' careers or has tarnished or set them back, is you get kids that are on the ages of 11 to 14 in that range, and you decide, well, it's going to cost me, let's just say, $600,000 to go race a go-kart for a season, okay? Well, it could cost me the exact same amount of money to go race an F4 car or a USF 2000 or F1600 car, and I'm going to do it for the exact same amount of price, but I'm just going to go up a series higher. Unless you've been able to do test days and I've competed in karts and you feel like you've done well and you're ready for the next step, or you have your own personal track and a personal car to where you can go on track as many times as you want and be able to get those reps in, I'd stay in karts until you feel like you're ready to move out, because most kids think they need to take that jump and move them into cars, and then next thing you know, what happens is they find themselves getting into wrecks, they find themselves getting into trouble, they're making dumb mistakes, or they're making the exact same mistakes that they made at the go-kart track in a car in a big track. Now you're putting now when you're dealing with cars, you're putting yourself, your body, and everybody else in harm's way. But not only that, but if you crash the car and everything, you cause damage, it's now costing you twice as much in crash repairs and bills in a car than it's going to cost you in a go-kart. So if you're going to be making the dumb mistakes, make them in a go-kart, don't make them in a car.
Great. That's great advice, Jordan. Thanks for that. You just paid your dues on this podcast. You've earned your keep right there. So I appreciate that. So
hopefully everyone can save the thousands of dollars that I had to spend.
Right. Yeah. And then where does sim racing fall into this? You're 18. You're sim racing before then or after that?
Yeah, I mean, so I was sim racing long before it. Quite honestly, my first sim race that I kind of did was in 2011 when I got an Xbox 360, and I started doing, the old NASCAR games. I would always race, the NASCAR Racing 2002, 2003, and Racing 4 on my PC, but those were all single-player games. I never really did the multiplayer version of that early level sim racing, so I always raced by myself doing that. But it was in 2011 when I got my first Xbox 360 NASCAR game, and I started racing online, and then I found a group of guys, and we started doing leagues at that time. So raced basically from 2011 till 2015, 4 years of doing that before they kind of transitioned into iRacing. And then once we started doing that, we started racing on iRacing there, and that was about 2 years of racing on iRacing before I transitioned into doing go-karts. And, I raced in iRacing doing all the league stuff until about 2017. And that's kind of when I found out that, the sim racing platform is vastly different than what it was like in the real life platform. I can drive a go-kart and I would drive a car in real life and I'd be perfectly fine. But the sim racing felt like you were on ice. It felt like you had no sense of feel, no sense of grip and all, and you would always just spin out and crash. So I'm like, well, this is ruining my ego. I'm just crashing all the time. I'm not getting the proper feel or anything that I would in a car, so it's not really benefiting or helping me in this case. I'm gonna just go drive the real thing in real life because that's what I'm used to and what I'm feeling. The sim does a good job in terms of getting drivers up to speed, understanding the new track layouts that they're going to, get muscle memory, look for referencing points, understanding what you need to do. So when you go to the track for the first time, if you're going to a new track, you can be fast right out of the gate, up to speed for that first session you're on track, and you're not having to learn the track like you normally would do if you didn't have a sim. That's what the purpose of the sim is. You're not going to find a guy who's going to work all of his techniques, work everything he can on his racecraft. You can still do that by doing the sim racing stuff, but you're not going to get the sense of feel of what it feels like to have the tires carving into the track, leaning all the forces, getting all the side load, and all the different forces that are being thrown at your body, whether it's lateral G-force or the throttle and brake and feeling all the threshold braking. You don't feel that in the sim. You're not going to feel that until you actually get on the racetrack and you actually experiment in a real car and you get the actual track time. So that's where being on track actually helps out tremendously, and that's what we always say: seat time, seat time, seat time. It's the biggest thing that you can ask for, and it truly has a value to it. As much as people say, no, I've been driving the exact same track for many, many years, it has a value to it to be on track in different cars and then different tracks as well too. But the sim just does a good job of getting people up to speed, understanding what the track they're going to is a layout. It's not going to make you tremendously a better racer, but it's going to get you up to speed so that way you can be a better racer when you get to the actual track.
Gotcha. Yeah, so you can put your skills to work on the track that you've learned. So, did you have a good representation of the Arlington track?
Me, not so much. I did maybe 5 laps on it. There was a sim at the PRI show in Indianapolis that we maybe got a couple laps on, and there really wasn't, compared to the sim track and the actual Arlington circuit. The sim was way off, and people are going to do that for the first time, just kind of guessing at what the render is going to be like. There's going to be a lot of things that are going to be different compared to what the real life actual layout's going to be. So it's more of just you use the sim to find out, all right, the next turn's going to be a left-hander, it's going to be a right-hander, then it's going to be a left-hander, or you got this long straightaway that's going to go into a third gear corner. So that's kind of what the sim does to kind of help that muscle memory and tell you where direction the track layout is going until you get on the actual track. So I was kind of trying to stay away from sims as much as I can until I got onto the actual track surface itself, because that was the only way I was going to understand which direction it kind of goes and how it's going to feel and how the car is going to react. I don't want to overpsych myself by thinking, oh, it's going to drive like this on the sim, and then I go to drive it on the sim in real life, and next thing you know, you're putting it in a wall and you're sitting out the rest of the session.
That's interesting, Jordan. You've thrown me for a loop. I would have pictured at your age, where you started in the seat later, that there would just be a continuous run through thousands of sim hours. But it's very interesting to hear you say that once you got into the real seat, you focused more on the real seat and less on the sim. So that's really, I think a lot of people will be interested to hear that. I know I'm super interested to hear that. So thanks for sharing.
There's a lot of different nuances that you just don't understand, and you will never understand until you actually get into the seat and you actually feel it for yourself. And the biggest thing the advocate is that when people get into a car for the first time, there's intimidation, obviously, because you're in an actual car and you're feeling the sense of speed and that fear factor that comes into it. You don't get that when you're in the simulator. So you have to kind of throw that aside and when you get into a car, be able to feel what the car is actually telling you and what it wants and how fast it needs to go. And you don't get that unless you actually do sim time, or seat time, I should say. Now, it was funny because there was one corner at the Audubon Country Club where I kind of grew up and got my start at racing. We call it our South Turn 4. It's basically in a radical. It's a flat out 90-degree corner that goes downhill then uphill, but you're taking it around 115 miles an hour. And I knew it was flat based on just watching previous video and other guys doing it. But then once I got into a car, I was like, there's no way it can be flat. That's just way too fast. It's not going to happen. But because I saw a video of guys doing it that were just flat and it looked easy, by like my fourth or fifth lap, I knew, all right, I'm going to have to work myself up to it. And by like lap 10, I was doing it because I'm like, I know it's flat. People are doing it. You just got to commit to it.
Mhm. Yeah, that's a wild feeling. So, neato. So Jordan, like how did your family work in with your racing? Like you're 18 years old, were you totally on your own, or was it that your dad now had a little more time? Do you have siblings? How's the family life around the racing?
So, only child, luckily enough. I didn't have to share anything that I had with anybody else. So, everything was mine.
Uh-huh.
But, yeah, when it came to the racing, we really didn't know at the time it was actually going to take off. Like, I had no
Uh-huh.
intentions on being a race car driver growing up or anything like that. I always wanted to. I thought it was pretty
Uh-huh.
cool, but
Who
never
didn't, right?
knew there was an opportunity to make it happen. So, all my life throughout my childhood and growing up, even till we even became members, we go to NASCAR races all the time, and we would go to like 6 a year, 2 in Michigan, 2 at Chicagoland, and 2 at Talladega. Those would be like our three tracks that we go to, and then there would be a couple of years where we do a couple of outliers. We went to Charlotte a couple of times, Texas, Phoenix. My family went to, and then also. Um, I'd say Daytona every now and then. But we realistically went to those three for the most part of my entire life growing up. Then once
Huh?
we started racing ourselves, we kind of just took the camping trips that we would do and, those race fan trips and just kind of transitioned them to now we're going to do the exact same thing, except now the son's the driver and I'm racing in them.
Sure.
So same
Yeah.
setup, treated exactly like an actual race weekend, like a vacation NASCAR weekend that we go to, except now we're going to like local go-kart tracks and all that. So for me, once my dad sold the business, this is now what, 2015, end of 2015 when we joined as members. That's when he got me the go-kart, and that's when we started just racing around here. We were racing locally mostly, and found out I was good. I was winning all the races, and I was winning now championships. We then 2017 extend to go into race nationally and race at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, and they did the Battle at the Brickyard, Daytona for WKA, Rock Island Grand Prix, all these other now travel racetracks that we're going to go race. And we start bringing our motorhome with us, start just going to all these tracks just like we would for a normal NASCAR weekend that we go to.
Uh-huh.
And then from there, it's just basically, we're racing go-karts at the time and just trying to get the experience that we need, go have fun and just, enjoy our time as a go-kart racer. But then we found out that I was actually pretty dang good at it. And when we did the Marga Ignite Challenge, this is now 2018, more of a regional championship. That goes to like five to six different racetracks in the Midwest, but racing four-cycle motors. That comes down to now me winning a championship in that year. And we figured, all right, well, now we kind of won a championship in go-karting here at the regional level and also a national level. Let's now transition to car racing. Let's see where it goes from there. And then that's when I got my step into racing a Radical around here at the track and started locally racing, the Radical around here. And then we decided to take it nationally, which I was doing pretty dang well. Finished second in the championship my first year in 2019 and thought, I could come back and win the championship the next year, or let's go to the next step. And what would be the next step after that? And that's either go sports car racing or go open wheel racing. That's kind of when my professional open wheel career started.
Uh-huh. And then you moved into Formula 2000?
Yep. So that was what, F3 at the time. And the reason why we went into F3, because it was either we can go Formula Regional Americas racing, or we can go USF 2000 racing. And both were kind of like on the fence on what was going to be the best. At the time, that was when Honda announced that they were going to be doing a scholarship to the champion of FR Americas, and that would be an Indy Lights scholarship through Honda. So we thought to ourselves, oh, we got to go try this. We got to go see, give it a shot. Who knows where it's going to end up and what's going to happen. So that was kind of throwing me towards the deep end because, one, it's a more higher horsepower car than I was probably used to. But also at the same time, I'm kind of skipping a level, but it's very similar to what the Radical sports car was going to be like in terms of lap time-wise. And it was just all about getting used to the power. The aerodynamics and everything else is going to be the exact same. It's just getting used to the power and a little bit bigger tires. And they were actually the exact same tires, too, that we were using on the Radical. So it was one less thing to actually have to worry about was the tire model. And then from there, it was just kind of, that's when I raced. Indy Lights had canceled its season at the time, so a lot of the Indy Lights guys came over to actually race in that championship. So I had guys like Linus Lundqvist that were racing, David Malukas, Santio Rutia were over there, Victor Franzoni was there, Daniel Frost. So you had guys with a bunch of experience, and then you had guys like Jacob Abel and James Rowe, guys who are experienced at that level too, coming over the race. So there was a lot of different experience that was there that I basically was thrown into the deep end on, but felt like I was competitive enough to go race against these guys. And it did show early on in the season.
Mm-hmm. Great. Yeah, that sounds really interesting. And then, do you still own a Radical? Do you drive Radicals?
Yeah, I mean, I have my own Radical that's still here. Have a Radical that's set up strictly for the Audubon Country Club, and that's been like the fastest car around here for, I don't know, let's call it 7 years now. But it's been this exact same car that's been, raced since I technically won my championship around here back in like 2019. So, I mean, it's been used only a handful of times every now and then. But because most of my racing now is on the pro circuit, so I don't race as much around here. But maybe I get like 1 or 2 races a year that I'll pull the Radical out and be able to drive it and give rides around here. But yeah, still have it, still drive it around track, hold still a track record around here. So it's still it does get its use, just a little bit less than what it used to get.
Sure, yeah, but you keep it around. Sounds fun. And then after 3 seasons in F2000, you move on to next. Is that right?
Yeah. So we went ahead. Actually, it was kind of like, I guess you could say 4 seasons in a sense, because I did 2 seasons in FR Americas in 2020 and 2021. And then 2022 is when they made the transition over to the Road to Indy or USF Pro Championships and raced Pro 2000 at the time. And that was through 2022 and 2023.
Uh-huh. So when you join one of these new series, do you like bring in, I mean, the adjustment, especially when you went from karting to Radical, the adjustment must have been pretty intense. You're shifting, you got suspension set up. Do you bring in coaching? Do you take lessons? Do you, like, what's the process? Like, how do you get up to speed fast?
Yeah, and a lot of that comes down to, who do you have around you to help you out? And for me, luckily enough, being at a country club and a member there, I had a lot of guys who were very influential and had been in the Radical series for quite some time, been driving these cars for quite a while. And I had some guys at the time that were coming out of go-karts as well as going into cars, and they said, driving a Radical is basically just a big go-kart. You're going to the exact same as you do in a go-kart. You'll excel in a Radical. And there's a little bit of a difference, obviously. Now you're dealing with not only just rear brakes, but now you're dealing with front braking. So everything's a lot more of a platform and neutral when it comes into the brake zones. But in terms of driving style-wise, it is very similar and exact same. You want to have the rear end hanging out a little bit, loose as fast is the general term.
Yeah, a little rotation.
But you want to also, understand now downforce and, different pounds of downforce. You have side skirts, you have front dive planes now that you're dealing with. You're dealing with rear wings as well, too. So you have different elements of downforce that are now helping you out. But when you start going from a go-kart, it's all about commitment. Downforce cars are all about commitment as well, too. So that helped out tremendously of knowing that, hey, the grip level is going to be there. It feels very comfortable going into a corner very fast. And obviously, age has a lot to do with it too. Being young and fearless at the time has a lot of big commitment. You don't have as much responsibility or worry on your life or in your head
Mm,
going on in your life. So
yeah.
it's a little bit easier to kind of take a corner a lot faster than most people would say that are older. But generally speaking, I had a lot of influential people that are around me that understood these cars, understood what it was like to go into data, what was understanding going into looking at video, what to look for. And they just kind of, mentored me a little bit throughout my life and my early career and just kind of helped build me up on speed. And eventually when like I was starting to get fast, they would start looking over my data and everything and help, and it would be helping them out, but they would also be noticing some similar things as well too that I was doing better, and they would point it out to me as well too, so that way I was actually learning, understanding what actually needed to be done for the car. And then it came down to doing setups, and I worked on some of the cars at the time, so working on these cars also helped me understand what needed to be done to them, how the setups were done, how they were worked on, how they're wrenched, and then what they do for each part of the car. So then now when I went into the car and I said, all right, well, the car needs a little bit more front end bite or a little bit more yaw and load into the corner. All right, that's a rear rebound adjustment that I need to have done, or that's a front camber or toe adjustment that needs to be done to this car. So just kind of understanding the little different nuances helped me understand setup, helped me make the right changes that I needed to do, and it helped me to develop my driving style. So now when I wanted to have the car do what I wanted to do, it was naturally became faster.
Neat. Then was it the same when you went to F2000 or Regional America or even Indy NXT, or where do you get an engineer to come in and help you?
So yeah, once you got up, kind of got up to the pro ranks, that's when the engineer starts to come in a little bit more crucially. And
Mm-hmm.
that's when you start doing these little track maps. You'd start giving a little bit more fine details of what the car needs for each specific corner. The engineer then kind of goes over with you saying, all right, we could do these kind of adjustments. It'll help you here, but it may harm you here. It may make the car feel better here and all that. What would you like? And it just comes down to a personal preference for me as a driver of what I need to be able to make the car do what I want it to do. Now that works out through F3 FR Americas into USF Pro 2000. The engineer is a vital part on how to set up a car and how you want it to go fast. And that's something that, you as a driver have to understand what you want the car to do or what you need the car to do to make it do what you want it to do as a driver.
So you can
And
ask
just
the
kind
right
of having
question.
that relationship with the engineer is a crucial, vital part.
Mm-hmm. That's good. Have you had the same engineer now for a little while, or do you have a new one this year, or how's that going?
So when I was working with Newman Walks Racing in FR Americas, I went through two different engineers. I think we were kind of engineering the car on our own the first season. Second year, we kind of have an engineer who actually is my engineer right now on the Indy NXT side, oddly enough.
Oh yeah.
So kind of had that relationship with him and kind of rekindled that. That was kind of cool. Um, had a different engineer when I was going through Pabst Racing and USF Pro 2000. So that was a little bit different. And then once I got to the Indy NXT side, kind of dealt with three or four different engineers until I linked up with the one that I have now. So it's kind of been back and forth a little bit here and there, but it's all about kind of how you rekindle or how you kindle that relationship with your engineer and just, if he is understandingly, he's knowledgeable about the car, knowledgeable about what setup changes need to be made, and also is he knowledgeable about what you need as a driver for a driving style and what you want to have happen. It's all the engineer's gonna make the decisions on what the car needs based off what your feedback is. And if you tell him, say, I need the car to be a little bit more freer entering the corner, or I need it to be more on the nose. I need a little bit more front end stability while I'm going in, so I can hold the car under the braking load going into a corner. He'll know the changes that need to be made, but you also don't want to tune yourself out of a window. You want to stay within that small niche window, so that way the car's going to be fast, and the little subtle changes here and there just kind of helps the car, not hurts the car.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Well, give the guy a shout out. You've said a lot of good things of him. What's his name?
So it was Doug Forker's my engineer right now.
There you
He's a
go.
good
All right.
guy. Obviously, he worked with Chip Ganassi back in the old days when there was when Zanardi was racing for Chip at the
Wow.
time. So he was
Uh,
way back in the day, and then obviously he's been working with Abel for quite some time. Worked with him back in 2021 when I was doing that for Americas, and then now was linked up with him when I'm on the Indy NXT side. So we've been friends for quite some time.
Oh, great. Well, that's good to hear. It's nice that people can be friendly and productive at the same time. Often, my experience as an old person is that if you're friendly, you are more productive. So it's nice that you have a good relationship with Doug, right? So good. Props to Doug. I'm an engineer by training, not a race engineer, just an
Nice.
engineer. So yeah, nice. So okay, I have a nerd out question for you. I'm going to ask you a real nerdy question. I've never
Okay.
heard anyone ask this question. So as a big racing fan, you see drivers, and some of them go from open wheel cars and then they go to sports cars and they do horribly. And other drivers are fast in sports cars and they go to open wheel cars and they do really poorly. And then some drivers like yourself go from one to the next and do well. What's going on here? Like why? What's so different? Like I've never driven an open wheel car before. I've driven
Hmm.
open cockpit car, but I've never seen the. I mean, I had a school in Formula Ford, so I spun the car and didn't really
Right.
do very well. So what's going on? Why does that happen? Yeah, that's my question.
I guess it comes down to, driver preference on how they handle themselves. It also comes down, obviously, with different types of cars have different types of driving styles. So, kind of like if you were in an open wheel car, I'll take this for example. When I was doing the USF Pro Series, I would be within, say, 6 tenths of, pole or the fastest guy. I could be within 6 tenths or even 4 tenths, 3 tenths, 2 tenths, be right there, very competitive in the fight. I can then jump into like a Lamborghini Super Trofeo in a sports car, and I'll be a second and a half or a second off pace. And I'm like, well, why? What's going on?
Uh,
And a lot of it just comes down to driving style. Open wheel cars are generally more momentum cars that want to be able to carry speed through the corners because you have a lot of downforce and you want to utilize that downforce to its maximum capacity. So some corners you need to take flat
mhm.
out and you need to not lift and carry as much speed as you can into the corner. Other corners you need to be hard on the brakes, but you need to be ready to go to get back to throttle for the corner exit. Sports cars, they are more point and shoot type cars. So that's get the car slow down as fast as you can, get all your turning done on the entry part of the corner, and get back to throttle as soon as you can. But you need to cut the car to basically come to almost a complete stop right at the turn-in point, so that way you get all the rotation that you need, and then it's basically just unwind the wheel and keep the wheel as straight as possible for the exit. When it's momentum cars, you need to have a little bit of steering lock into the car, so that way you can carry the momentum, but you're also continuing the turning throughout the last quarter of the corner. Whereas on the
Uh-huh.
sports car side, you want to be as straight as you can, so that way you're not getting any wheel slippage or wheel spin on the exit, and that's where all the time kind of
Uh-huh.
comes lost. That's why when you see a bunch of like go karters, and especially applies to shifter karters, because
Uh-huh.
of how much power is in a shifter cart, they tend to be better
Uh-huh.
at point and shoot cars. So when you get up to the higher levels of racing, like sports car racing, or even Indy NXT or IndyCar, the higher open wheel stuff, there's a lot more power
Uh-huh.
that's utilized to your arsenal, so point and shoot tends to become more of a method when it comes to the higher horsepower cars. When you're doing with USF 2000, FR Americas, or even Pro 2000, they're much smaller cars, a lot less
Hmm.
horsepower, and it's more momentum driven. So when you get a guy who comes out of four cycle karts, like myself, and
Uh-huh.
jumps into, let's say, USF 2000 or USF Pro 2000, naturally speaking, you're going to pick it up pretty quick.
Right, because you're used to the momentum riding.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep. So that's
great.
like the biggest difference. And you see a lot of guys who kind of come back and forth through series and go from, open wheel to sports car racing. It's a lot it's very difficult. That's why when you see a lot of the open wheel guys when they come to sports car racing, they're really not driving GT cars. They're driving more prototypes. And that's
Hmm.
because the prototype is a momentum
Yeah.
based car dealing with downforce, and it's very similar to what the open wheel driving style is like. If you go from the open wheel
Uh-huh.
style to a GT style, you now have ABS braking, anti-lock brake system that you're working on, and traction control
Hmm.
that are at your arsenal, where it's not really much at your
Uh-huh.
arsenal when you're driving a prototype car. So there's
Yeah.
a little bit different aspects that kind of go from car to car, but it generally translates to the driving style.
Gotcha. Great. Great answer. Thank you very much. That's a good one. So, all right, we'll talk more about the current season. I mean, you got a lot going on, right? Able Motorsports is doing well. I don't want to dig on your other teammates, but of the 3 drivers, you are ahead in the points, right?
Hmm.
So I just wanted to let everyone know that Jordan is beating his teammates who are much talked about before the season started. So I'm
Yeah.
real proud of you for that, Jordan. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very
So,
much.
and yeah. And then you just recently went Arlington, you had a pair of P6s. So that was a really good showing.
Yeah, we had a very good weekend out of Barber, I would say. And
And
the biggest thing is that it's still very early days on the season, and I always like to obviously get off to a great start when it comes to a season. So collecting points is always the biggest deal, and trying to keep your nose clean for the very beginning part of the season is fine. It's tougher to generate points towards the latter part of the season, but you want to build up that points gap now in the early part. So that way, like in the later part of the season, it gives you a little bit of a buffer to make some mistakes if you need to, when you can take a little bit more chances that come with it. But yeah, I'd say, obviously with Arlington and then Barber, we've now had a 3 race streak of top 10 finishes. So that's been really good on us. It's been good momentum to us in the 48 Able Motorsports crew. But yeah, compared to everybody else in my teammates wise, as a team, I'd say, we want to be doing a little bit better. I think we're struggling just a little bit when it comes to, our peak performance. Um, guys like Miles Rowe, Lockie Hughes, and some of the other guys that we saw, be championship favorites that we thought early on coming into the year have had a little bit of a rough start than we would like to see. So, and my guys like
right,
myself, I'm trying
it's
to take advantage of it
fascinating.
as much as I can, and I'm also trying to, you know, expound on that too, to now be more at the front runners, because with them having a little bit of a difficult start allows opportunity for guys like myself to now make a move and move up the championship standings, and now, like you said, be ahead and be kind of the top dog at Able Motorsports right now. Now it's time to lead that charge and kind of see how far we can take it and how far out the grid order we can go. I still think there's a lot of race. There's obviously a lot of racing left to go this season, and I think there's a lot more potential in our camp, especially at Able Motorsports, that we have yet to expound on and explore. I'd say everybody else that you kind of seen, HMD guys and even the Andretti guys, they've come up pretty strong early on. I think they've kind of hit their peak pretty early, and I don't, not saying they're not going to be, fast every single weekend. I think they are going to be fast every single weekend. But I think from our standpoint at Able, we still have a lot of ground to kind of catch up on. But that just means the ceiling for us is higher than the rest of the paddock. And I think that's where we can kind of see as we get towards the latter part of the season, whether it's we go to by Detroit or Road America, or even when we hit the ovals in the middle part of the season. That's where our bread and butter, and that's when you're going to see a lot more of the Able Motorsports cars challenging up towards the front.
All right, all right. I'm looking forward to that. So, yeah, that sounds fantastic. What's your thoughts on oval racing? Do you like it? Like
I love it.
you?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
absolutely
yeah,
love it. Most of my
yeah.
best results have come from ovals.
Huh?
And, especially me being a NASCAR guy, kind of growing up and going to all the races,
Huh?
um, I generally love, just being flat out on an oval and just having to keep it pinned and just be more of, kind of placing where your car needs to be, whether it needs to be a half a lane higher to get the clean air, or you're chopping somebody's nose off if you need to, or just kind of, how the dynamic and flow of oval racing is. I absolutely love the kind of style of it. And I think it suits my style, especially with me growing up. Being around and playing NASCAR games and all that. Plus, especially my favorite races to go to were the IndyCar races at Chicagoland Speedway. They always produce some of the best IndyCar racing that was out there, as well as some of the greatest finishes that are there and closest finishes, as a matter of fact. So, being able to see those kind of races be back in the schedule would be awesome from an IndyCar standpoint. But for me, like the racing in Asheville, I absolutely love, because it's more
Yeah.
of a wide open, flat out type of race for us. I wish we can use, a little bit more of the racetrack as well too, and have maybe 2 or even 3 lanes that we can use. To me, that's, always been a key high arc part of the schedule that I love to see, and I'd always love going to Nashville to being able to drive there, because it's such a fun track to be able to just drive and hold it wide open at 185 miles an hour. It's awesome.
Yeah, it was really fun last season with it being the finale as well. So our finale. So that was great. All right, so let's talk about tracks. What's your favorite track? What track do you think is the hardest?
Hmm.
Which one is the most fun to race at? How about those three? Favorite,
Well,
hardest, and most fun.
I'd probably say favorite. was probably racing at Abu Dhabi last 2 years ago when I raced over
That
there in Europe for the
you raced
Radical World
Radical
Finals.
over there. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
How did that deal come through?
So
Did they call you up or?
that wasn't part of me winning the championship in 2024 with Graham Rahal when I raced for his team. That was actually a year.
Uh-huh.
Um, on paper, I was technically supposed to go race Indy NXT that year. That would have been my first year racing Indy NXT.
Uh-huh.
But with the way financial budgets were and how things kind of fell through, we just unfortunately didn't have the budget to be able to make it happen. So the next best step for me would have been I could do another year of USF Pro 2000, would have been my third year, which would have cost us anywhere around $600 to $800,000 to go do, or I
Uh-huh.
can go race Radical, which costs us roughly around $300,000, so it's half that budget. But I'd be racing at four of the IndyCar tracks that they go to.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it was
Uh-huh.
Barber, Road America, Toronto, and Laguna Seca.
Uh-huh.
And those four tracks were going to be key tracks to race on just because it keeps
Okay.
me in front of some IndyCar teams and keeps me, talking to, Indy NXT teams, IndyCar teams, and just kind of keep my
Uh-huh.
name there. Plus, Graham Rahal was just introducing his new Radical team. So I
Uh-huh.
wanted to help him get a championship. I knew I had the skills to win a championship, and we knew I had the skills to go dominate the series if we wanted to. And I just wanted to be, linking up with Graham, IndyCar driver, and
Mhm.
just a
Yeah.
very influential, good mentor, and a nice, gentleman who has now built himself an empire business with his Graham Rahal performance fleet that he has done over there in
Absolutely.
Zionsville,
Yeah.
Indiana. So if you haven't had a chance yet, go on to Zionsville, Indiana, right across from the Rahal Letterman Lanigan shop, and go check out Graham Rahal Performance. It is a absolute amazing facility.
I
Um,
follow him on the socials. It's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, he's always posting about cars that he's there. His
Yeah.
favorite car, as I can tell you right now, is a Porsche GT Carrera. So he
Yeah.
absolutely loves those cars. But from our standpoint, we thought it was a better move just because one, it's a series I know. Two, it's a way for me to go win a championship. Three, I'm racing for Graham Rahal, so that's an IndyCar team already that's going to get some publicity and some notoriety behind it. And then four, you're racing on IndyCar weekends in front of the IndyCar paddock as well too. So your name's going to get announced over the loudspeaker. People are going to watch your races, and
Hmm.
it's just a way for me to keep my
Yeah.
name relevant, even though I'm not going to be racing in the Road to Indy ladder system. So keeps my name in the paddock, keeps me around, and it keeps allow me to show face rather than just being gone and forgotten. So once we'd started doing
These are.
that, go ahead.
I was going to say, you exhibit a series of very smart decisions. Like this is,
Well,
you make a lot of good decisions, Jordan. This is a guy who, like, I know you're a little older than the other drivers, but these are the decisions of a smarter, more mature person.
Well, it's all about, you have to treat, at the end of the day, each race car driver is a brand. We have our name is a brand, and we have to, utilize our brand and put it in places that we know where it's going to get exposure and where it's going to perform. And from a business decision standpoint, you want to, yes, it's not any next, it's not up there, but it's keeping yourself relevant. It's keeping yourself in the limelight of everything else, and it's producing the quality results that as a driver it can produce momentum, and it's going to give you the views, and it's also going to give you the exposure that you need in a brand, and that's the only way it's going to grow. So that's what we thought was the best decision for me. I honestly could have gone back to USF Pro 2000, and especially from our standpoint where it was financially, do we decide to waste the money on another year of Pro 2000, and if we don't win the championship, where do we go from there the next 2 or 3 years after that? And where does that line me up? Well, being able to come in, win a championship with Graham, and do a Radical saved our budget for a little bit, allowed us to save a little bit of money, and they allocate that to the next year. But also, too, it gave me opportunity. And what that opportunity came with was, all right, the funds are coming our way. Now we can, and with seats opening up, now we can kind of pinpoint when we can jump into an Indy NXT car, get some testing done, then go do some races without actually having to do the full calendar season and kind of get some seat time that was kind of built up alongside it. The fun part was when we went to Road America, I actually had the opportunity to kind of do double duty and do the Radical season because that was one of our races, but also go race Indy NXT at Road America. And that allowed me to kind of go to a track that I knew like the back of my hand, and also be able to go compete for a race and kind of have to go back and forth from paddock to paddock. So at one point I'm going to the Radical paddock to go do a race. Then I'm having to go to the Indy NXT paddock. I actually then have to go to a driver's meeting for Radical. Then once that or Indy NXT driver's meeting, then once that driver's meeting is done, go straight to pit road because my car is there for Radical practice and all that. So that was a fun weekend to be able to kind of exploit that. But back to the Radical season and how we got in 2024 and how that all came. I ended up winning 9 races that whole season. So out of 18 race season, that was half the wins in that season. Won the championship, and winning the championship for Graham Rahal, we thought it was a good idea to go do the Radical World Finals. So Graham, fortunately enough, gave us the green light, sponsored it for us to go over to Abu Dhabi and try to become the Pro 1500 champion over there, bring the American champion and try to go race against the other Europeans and all the Radical drivers from around the world and try to become the best of the best. And to race at a track like the Yas Marina circuit, Graham's first year, to try to basically go win everything was kind of in our cards. And we gave it our best shot, but we had some circumstances come out of our control that forced us from kind of winning the whole thing. We've set the fastest lap on lap 6 during our testing there, but then when it came time to qualify, I could tell the engine was kind of starting to run a little bit down on power. And when we did our first pace lap for the first race, in the first heat race, I felt a vibration when I was in third gear, and sure enough, when we went into turn 1 on the first lap, I lost third gear, and then we had to swap the motor and everything in the car afterwards. So I finished last in that first race, swapped the car, had to go from the left side of the car, now driving on the right side of the car, driving a completely whole different chassis, and trying to race the rest of the weekend, which now having to drive a new car, no practice, no nothing, just going to the races and having to use the racing sessions as now test sessions for me, just eventually came all the way through the rest of the races and finished third in the finals. So I was able to get a podium and a trophy to bring home with us. So it was just a weekend of adversity that we kind of had to fight through, which coincided with the final weekend of the Americas Championship when we were in Sonoma, where our car caught on fire and we had to go into a whole new chassis to win the championship.
Wild. Yeah, well, perseverance will get you there, I suppose. So congratulations on that.
And that's the thing. It's like, even if you're out, you spin out in a race and everything, just it tells you not to give up. You just got to keep pushing through it and go as hard as you can all the way until the end. You know, until the checker flag flies and you cross the line, you just don't stop pushing.
There you go. So, Jordan, what do you think is the hardest track on this year in the calendar?
Hardest track for us, I'd say, on the calendar, or even the hardest track, I'd say probably the hardest track for us this year is going to be Detroit. And Detroit's always difficult just because of how you have the streets of Detroit are very abrasive and they're very bumpy when you go through, especially the quick right-left sector right before into pit road. But, you know, that track in itself is just, it's very difficult because it's all 90-degree corners. It's very difficult to get a good run out of a corner without getting wheel spin. And the way the track kind of crowns with the way the street circuit is, sometimes you want to get on power early, and the next thing you know, the rear end of the car is going to snap out from underneath you. So there's just a lot of different variables about the streets of Detroit that can catch a driver out. And, of course, it's very tricky to pass there. You have to have a very good run. The passing zones are very tricky. So just trying to survive is kind of the name of the game when it comes to the streets of Detroit.
That's I don't know if you know, I'm in the Detroit area. That's the home race around here, and I get to drive my car on the track. They have if you're a Corvette owner, they let you drive on it. And also, before they ever built the track, I took my one wheel. It's like an electric skateboard. Uses a big go-kart tire.
Yeah.
And I took that down there. And the thing about the one wheel is it lets you know where the camber is, you know?
Yeah.
And that turn 2, on television, you would have no idea that turn 2 drops off so hard. But it's also the entrance to the long straightaway. So it really makes that turn. The reason there's so much passing going into turn 3 is because turn 2 is so difficult.
Yeah. Everyone gets a bad run out of 2, or the rear end's slipping out and everyone's trying to catch on and hold on to the car and everything. I know I had one moment there last year in my race to where the rear end stepped out for me when I was coming back to the field. But yeah, that was the first time it kind of caught me off, and it's a tricky turn. You know, you're right. TV doesn't do it justice on how tricky of a corner it actually is.
Yeah, yeah, it's fun. Yeah, it's a fun track to watch. I'm glad I don't have to race in it because it seems like it seems like a knife fight down there. So let's talk about like goals and mindset. What's going on up in the head of Jordan? Do you come into the season with a goal? Is it all broken down? Is it very executive or is it very seat of the pants? Like, how's it go?
More seat of the pants. You know, I try
Hmm.
not to set my sights up for expectations or goals. I mean, obviously everyone has goals and we want to achieve those goals. But
Huh?
I try not to, pinpoint, let's just say a specific number like, oh, I need to finish top three or I need to finish fifth or something like that. I don't really try to put those expectations out there because it doesn't really do you justice and it actually, not saying demoralizes you as a person, but it also could be more of a negative standpoint if you don't fulfill those goals or you feel like you achieved those. So I try not to set up expectations as much. I try to kind of go in more with just an open, clean mind and just try to do the best performance I possibly can and just let the results kind of come as they go. And, where the results may fall, you just take whatever you can take and you can get. Because if you're trying to set yourself up for expectations, let's say you're running seventh, or like let's say you're running fifth or fourth, and you're trying to get on the podium, you tend to push a little bit harder because you're not in fourth or fifth, and next thing you know, you start making mistakes, and then that fourth and fifth turns into a seventh, eighth, or ninth place finish, and then you just kind of get upset yourself and you get more frustrated, and the momentum of yourself as a person starts to fall down, and the confidence goes along with it. So
Uh-huh.
this year, I've kind of set myself a little bit more less of expectations, just more of like keep it open minded. Wherever the results may vary and they play out, we just take them as they come. And if we get a win, we get a win. If we have to settle for second, we have to settle for second.
Hmm. Yeah, I like that attitude. There's any number of ways you can do it. Like as a business person, I always had like very specific goals, you know. And then I remember my kids were doing martial arts, and they were doing this Korean martial art, and there was this term they called it pilsung, and pilsung, two words, two syllables. It means do your best and never give up. That's the whole thing. And there are a lot of situations where you do your best and you don't give up, and that's what you can do. And I like that attitude too. Yeah.
Pilsung, huh? That's an
All right.
interesting
I
word.
have yep, yeah. I'm not even sure how you spell it because I'm just in the back of the martial arts class with my children in there, you know. Um, I'm going to selfishly ask you a question. I do these segments on my Instagram where I try to eat like a driver and I try to work out like a driver. And then I'm an old man, you know, so the workout like a driver thing doesn't usually work out that well. And even the eat like a driver thing doesn't usually work out that well because young guys like you that are burning a lot more calories than I do probably eat things that I
Hmm.
don't. So can you tell me a little more about your diet and your fitness?
So tip number one: don't eat fast. People tend
Don't
to,
eat
when they're
fast. Okay.
hungry, eat
Yeah,
very
I'm a
fast, and
slow
next
eater.
thing you know, by the time you like, let's say 20 minutes goes by, your brain then tells you you're full. Well, you ate a whole sandwich already. If you eat slow,
Yeah.
by the time your 20 minutes is up or whatever, and the your stomach tells the brain I'm full, you may only have half a sandwich left there, or you already ate. So the slower you eat can actually keep you from eating more intake than you actually have. But for me,
Huh?
I sometimes try to eat salads as much as I can. I'm a chicken guy as well too, so some
Huh?
good protein as well. I like to also go for steak, high protein as well too. So just kind of try to stay away from any of the trans fat stuff as much as I can. If I do have a cheat day, or let's say I'm on the road or whatnot, yeah, there's gonna be a couple days where I stop for fast food stuff just because it's quick and easy, and also I'm on the road. But I always have this mentality that if you're gonna eat fast or junk food at all, the next workout you're doing is gonna be twice as hard because you got to burn that fat or that calories intake that you just did and burn it
Uh-huh.
off.
Right.
So that comes with that.
Now you're kind of one of the bigger drivers, aren't you? Like how tall are you and what do you weigh?
So I'd probably say I'm anywhere around 170. or the 160, I'd say 170. But yeah, 6 foot is pretty tall from a driver's standpoint. You get a lot of these Europeans that come over, they're like little jockeys. They weigh like 145 to 150 pounds, and they're like 5'8", 5'6", 5'4", even as small as that. So
Yeah.
they're absolute jockeys that it comes down to it. So a guy like myself who's 6 foot, definitely have to watch my weight a lot more too, when it comes down to it. But I am right there at the baseline of how much weight I can add to the car or whatnot. Sometimes I can add weight, sometimes I don't. So it doesn't really hinder
Uh-huh.
my performance or hinder my um, weight or scale when we go in for tech and all that. But any weight you can save is time on the track, as we all like to say. Weight is time.
Right. Yeah, right. And then what type of workouts are you doing? How many days a week? And are they strength, cardio, both?
Everything, from full body workouts to cardio
Uh-huh.
days to try to burn off any calories to work on my cholesterol and also my we like to call my I think it's velocity, heart rate as well too. So you're doing a lot of different intervals, active intervals, lactive intervals, I would even say, to aerobic capacity workouts, even some neck training as well too. So I have myself an iron neck that I do a lot of neck training with. Can do about
Uh-huh.
85 pounds worth of weight that I can pull with my neck as
85
well
pounds
too.
on the iron neck.
Roughly, yeah.
Holy smokes. Yeah, all right.
So it's a lot. It's a lot because of all the G forces and everything that we do in the open wheel cars and how much,
Mm-hmm.
force is on our neck, especially during long races. I mean, our races are only like in 55 minutes to an hour long, but you get into an IndyCar race, you're looking at an hour and a half long race too. And especially when you
Yeah.
go to Indianapolis where you're pulling, 240 miles an hour into a corner, it's a
Yep.
lot of G load on your neck. So
Mm-hmm.
you got to have a strong neck for that.
Yeah.
The other thing is just, a lot of core muscle, shoulder, arm training as well, upper body training.
Mm-hmm.
For us, especially because we have no power steering in our cars. So when you're dealing with the wheel, you're feeling all the little bumps, the nooks, the crannies of the track as well, and how much force is being added on the wheel. And especially when you go to a track like Barber, for example,
That's a hard
it's
one.
got a lot of different elevation, undulation, and a lot of compression that happens into the corners. So there's a lot of weight and load that happens on the steering wheel that you have to hold together. And when you're doing, let's just say, 35 to even 70 laps of that for an hour and a half straight, it takes a toll on your body. So you have to have the muscular endurance and the muscular strength to be able to turn that wheel, even when there's like 25 to even 35 pounds of weight on it, and you've been doing it for about an hour.
Yeah. Yeah. That's hard work. It's hard work. I'm not looking for a seat. I'm done with all that. I'm just watching from the couch or from the pits. Great. Those are great answers. I'll try to do something with that and try to pretend to be you for half an hour one day. Able Motorsports is going to be in the Indy 500, from what I understand.
There's been talks about it. It's been a little bit on the cusp, I'd say. Obviously, I haven't heard anything officially yet. There's been rumors and talks about it as well too. They're trying to put obviously Jacob Abel into it as well too.
Cool.
Um,
Yeah.
there is a chassis there. I think the last piece of the puzzle that they're kind of waiting on that we're trying to hear back from is, if you have a Chevy contract for a motor and all that. So
Right.
I think
Right.
that's the last piece of the puzzle before it kind of moves forward with it.
Huh?
So waiting to hear the confirmation on that before it's official and everything. But there is a little bit of talk, I think, about it of coming to fruition.
That'll be exciting. I plan to be at the open test in the next 2 weeks. In 2 weeks.
Okay,
So
nice.
yeah. If I see you there, I'll say hi.
I might stop
So
by. We'll see. It depends on where we're at. I think we might be. I think we might be free for that week, so I might be making the trip down there. We'll see.
yeah. Yeah. It's a fun thing to see. Fast cars are fun to look at. So anyway, Jacob, Jordan, I want to say thank you. I'm starting out. This is my first year creating content for IndyCar. I only create
Nice.
content for the IndyCar series and its ladder. And so you're my first driver interview, and I'm really thankful
Nice.
for you. You've lent a tremendous air of legitimacy to my efforts, and you by far been the best podcast we've had. So I really want to say thanks for that. Is there anyone you want
Awesome.
to thank? You have
Well,
sponsors you
appreciate.
want to thank or partners?
Absolutely. Well, first and foremost, appreciate you having me on, thinking of me, and asking me to join the show and everything. It's been a lot of fun, talking about my career and everything, and talking a lot about racing as well too. But yeah, I mean, obviously, want to thank the Audubon Driver Academy for what I've done as well too throughout my efforts here at the Audubon Country Club. Got to thank Driven Sunglasses, Veterinary Developments, powered by Stripe, Gripco. Been huge partners on our car as well too. Bill PCs is another partner that just signed on with us this year as well too. So lots of different people that have come on board, as well as our charity that we run in Racing for Mental Health that I'm a big advocate of as well too. That comes into the month of May now that it's going to be Mental Health Awareness Month. It's been a huge effort to kind of get that charity up and off the ground, and we've been having successful events as well too. Able Motorsports with Able Construction, also big partners and big efforts to kind of make the Indy next season happen for all of us. So yeah, lots of partners and people to thank that have been in our corner and helping us out throughout the whole key point. And I think I mentioned Stripe as well too. Stripe's another partner that came on board earlier this year that we announced at the Miami test just before St. Petersburg. So they've had a really good effort, a really good run, got a lot of camera time as well too this last race at Barber Motorsports Park. So hopefully we can keep the relationships going and yeah, keeps us in a seat for the years to come.
Great. Fantastic. Good run through. Anyway, thanks everybody for watching, paying attention. You can see IndyCarDad podcast on all the podcast networks. You can follow me on social media. I'm at IndyCarDad, and I try to be fun and try to bring on great guests like Jordan. I think I speak for Jordan and I, and when I say that I'd love to see you at the races. So thank you. All right, Mr. Jordan, I have stopped recording. So